Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 289. Today we are talking all about friendship. Friendships are tough for neurodivergent kids, and it's really a challenge for us as parents too of those neurodivergent kids, because sometimes we have an idea of what friendship should look like for our kids, and it's very different from the reality. And sometimes it's us that has more of a problem with it than our kids. So we're going to talk about what kinds of things we can do for our kids to help them find and keep friends when they're looking for friendships, as well as what we can do for ourselves to help ourselves manage the emotions that come along with raising kids who don't seem to fit or find their people during their childhood. Homeschooling neurodivergent kids can be really different from what we thought parenting was going to look like. So we're going to talk about that today. Before we begin, though, I want to thank CTC Math for sponsoring this podcast. We always appreciate their support, as well as appreciate Night Zookeeper and the support that they have been offering to us. And so I want to tell you a little bit about Night Zookeeper before we begin this episode. So pop your earbuds in and let's get on with today's episode right after this word about our sponsor, Night Zookeeper. Hey there, if you are looking for a fun and stress-free way to tackle language arts in your homeschool this year, let me tell you about something that could be a total game changer for your homeschool, Night Zookeeper. It's an award-winning online program that helps kids ages 6 to 12 build their writing, reading, and spelling skills. And the best part? They actually love it. Seriously, it's so engaging and interactive that your kids won't even realize they're learning. We used Night Zookeeper in our homeschool when my girls were younger, and they had a blast creating stories and characters. This fall, my youngest son is jumping in, and I'm especially excited because he's a bit of a reluctant writer. I love knowing he'll get gentle encouragement and even personalized feedback from real tutors, so I don't have to be the one hovering over to correct all his errors and help him become a better writer. He will have somebody else helping him. Here's why homeschoolers like me love Night Zookeeper. It's fun. Kids can play independently through thousands of games and activities for grades 1 through 6. It's comprehensive, covering reading, writing, spelling, grammar, and more. It's trackable. You get a parent dashboard to monitor progress and even assign custom tasks. It's personalized because the tutors inside Night Zookeeper give feedback on your child's writing, which is huge. And it's offline too. There are free monthly printables delivered right to your inbox. Oh, and better yet, there's a 7-day free trial, so your kids can dive into the magical world of Night Zookeeper risk-free. You can check it out at the link in the show notes or at nightzookeeper.com. And let me know what your kids create. I have a feeling they are going to love it. And I want to give a special thanks to Night Zookeeper for sponsoring the podcast. It's sponsors like that keep the podcast going. We appreciate their support and we want to show support in return. So if you're in the market for a new language arts program for your kids ages 6 through 12, you definitely need to check it out. Let them know that you heard about it on the Raising Lifelong Learners podcast, and let me know if you have any questions. I can't wait to hear how it goes for you. All right, are you ready? Let's get on with today's episode. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here, and this is a topic today that we've talked about before, but it is definitely worth revisiting this time of year because school years are starting for so many people, and it's a time where a lot of parents and a lot of kids start to worry about friendships and connection and finding their people. And so we're going to talk about the friendship challenges that we face when we are raising neurodivergent kids and possibly when we are neurodivergent ourselves. And I know that this is probably something that you feel as a homeschooling parent of a neurodivergent kid, especially if your kids are gifted or twice exceptional, or if they are on the autism spectrum,
or just really if they're neurodivergent in any way, because anxiety can get in the way. It can be really hard to cultivate, form, and keep lasting friendships. Maybe your kiddo is lonely and longs for a friend but can't seem to keep one. Or maybe they're lonely and longs for a friendship group but can't figure out quite how to put themselves out there and initiate contact. Maybe your kiddo is perfectly content building epic Lego cities alone, and you scroll social media haunted by the pictures of play dates and birthday parties and other events that you and your kiddo weren't invited to. Either way, you're not alone, and we're going to unpack some of this together today and see if we can at least ease the ache and possibly come up with some solutions and strategies for you and for your kids to help maybe start reaching out and forming some of those friendships that are keepable for the long term. We're going to talk about why friendships can be tricky for neurodivergent kids, what we as parents can do to support them, and how to reframe our own expectations and guilt when it comes to the social life of our kids and those childhood milestones. So go ahead, grab a cup of coffee, fold some laundry, take a walk, whatever it is you do to listen to your podcasts, and let's chat about this. Okay, so first, why are friendships so hard for neurodivergent kids? Let's just start with that why. Our neurodivergent kiddos are wired differently, and that includes how they think about and experience relationships. Gifted and twice exceptional kiddos often have, as we've talked about before, asynchronous development. A 10-year-old who reads at a high school level but melts down like a 5-year-old when things don't go their way is going to struggle with same age peers because intellectually they're far beyond and they're reading complex texts and making connections within their everyday life that the typical 10-year-old might not be able to do. But then when they melt down over a slight or a perceived issue or even a real issue, the 10-year-olds are looking at them like, what is this baby doing? And recognizing that's not age appropriate for them. And so being confused as to why this kid who seems like he's got it all together is melting down. And that can be really difficult when you're trying to build a friendship. They could be struggling with sensory sensitivities, noise, touch, smells, crowded environments can be overwhelming. So this can make it hard when they go into a situation where everybody seems like they're talking or everybody seems like they've already got friends. And to find their people within that group that already seems to have it all together can be really difficult and overwhelming. And the truth of the matter is, and this goes along with that asynchrony, what the kiddo may or may not understand is that they don't all have it all together and they don't all have long-term lasting friendships. They're just better at navigating overwhelming and crowded and noisy situations and can handle that. And a lot of times our kids are looking for deeper connections, whereas the majority of the population are first seeking those shallow, just brief connections that then over long term will develop into a deep lasting friendship. And our kids want that now. And so the overwhelm of all of the noises, all of the sensations can be just difficult for our kids to navigate through, whether they are 2 or 22. It doesn't matter. That's something that's challenging. I'll be honest, I still struggle with that to this day. I tell my kids all the time that this isn't easy for me either. And I'll give you an example. Whenever I go to a convention or a conference, particularly one I've never been to before, whether I'm an attendee or a speaker, I always hope that or bring with me somebody else to help navigate like the lunchroom or the crowded restaurant. I don't enjoy meeting people somewhere if I'm the one that needs to find them. I want them to find me or walk in with me. I really struggle with that. And so walking into a room and finding a face that I know, you know how if you're at a conference or a convention where you're the attendee and you're going into like the lunchroom or a breakout session and you really want to sit with somebody, but you don't know where your person is, it can be really intimidating to look at this sea of faces and find your person among them. I even struggle with this as an adult, finding my kids or my husband in a crowded room. And so it can be really difficult for our kids to make friends if they are overwhelmed by just the place that they're at. Kids who are neurodivergent also struggle with rigidity and thinking. So they have a preference for rules or routines and sameness that doesn't always leave room for give and take of friendship. And that can be difficult because they might be thinking that's not the way we're supposed to be when a kid is doing some like unloading, as my kids like to call it, trauma dumping. And my kids are like, you don't even know that person. Like, how could you be telling them all this about you? And then, or they get swept up in it too, and then realize that they said something that they shouldn't have that might have impeded their ability to have a deeper friendship with that person. And they're very focused on what are the rules, kind of regulation of group work and group friendships. And so they have a hard time breaking out of that. And a lot of times with friendships, you just got to break out of it. And then that idea that somebody's going to invite you somewhere or somebody's going to include you might be in the back of their mind because that's how you involve people, is you invite them into your group. But if you're not being invited, a lot of times in new situations, you just have to go up to somebody and say, hey, what are you guys doing? Can I join in? That can be really difficult for our rigid thinkers because in their heads, that's not how it works. You get included or not included. And that black and white doesn't translate really well to the fluidity of forming friendships and relationships. Another thing that really gets in the way of our kids who are neurodivergent forming friendships is intensities and deep interests. One of my all-time favorite books is Emotional Intensity in Gifted Students. There's a relatively new edition of that book out by Christine Fonseca. Christine's been on the podcast before, so I'll make sure that I link her episode in the podcast show notes. But it's worth listening to. It's worth reading. I know a lot of times as homeschool parents, we shy away from books that are clearly written for the classroom, as Emotional Intensity in Gifted Students seems like it would be. But it is written in a way that, first of all, is conversational, it's easy to digest, easy to apply, and it has so many good nuggets of wisdom for us who are raising these neurodivergent kids who have these intensities. I often say that our kids have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. There's no in between. So everything feels catastrophic or euphoric. And so if we're not making friends or we don't have a solid friendship group, then we are all alone, lonely, and we're never going to have friends like the other people. And our entire lifetime of schooling is going to be like this. And most neurotypical kids are like, okay, I had a bad day. I need to make sure I put myself out there again tomorrow. And then when you do find a friendship or you connect with somebody, this is everything. And it's not necessarily for that other person. They want lots of acquaintances because they don't form the intense depth of relationships that neurodivergent people do. So let's just use the example of talking about Minecraft mods or the periodic table for an hour straight. It's fascinating to them, but not necessarily to other kids. Other kids, other young adults, other teens might just want to talk about what happened at practice, talk about what happened in class, talk about what's going on in the latest television show. And those shallow conversations don't necessarily hold our neurodivergent kids' interests for as long and feels like a waste of time. And so they may or may not seem like they're bored or indifferent, and that doesn't translate to them being included the next time because they weren't really participatory. Or they try to overdo it. Intensity can work both ways, and it's really challenging for our kids to overcome that. And then, and I think this is a biggie, even if it's not diagnosed, even if we don't understand it, even if we think like our kids aren't struggling with it, so many of our neurodivergent kids struggle with social anxiety or social skills delays, especially for our twice exceptional kids with autism, ADHD, or anxiety, because those twice exceptionalities get in the way of them just reaching out. They overthink, they perseverate, they cycle around and around, they overthink every interaction, every look, every change of subject, everything. And they ruminate on it and withdraw further. It can be so hard for our kids to find their people. I was talking with my 22-year-old today, and one of the things he said was, I just feel like I'm really getting the hang of this group dynamics and friendship thing. And if I had gone away to college, like right away at 18, I would have never been able to navigate it. And so just that idea that it takes some of us longer. I'm 51 years old and I still struggle with this. This is actually one of my biggest struggles. I'm not necessarily a person who struggles with social anxiety, though I do struggle with the social anxiety piece that is the initial impact and the initial conversations and the initial finding of people. Once I get in and get my groove or get past that first hump, I'm fine, particularly when I'm talking about something I love, which is why so many people who have listened to this podcast and have maybe heard me say something about my struggles with introversion and things like that are shocked when they meet me in person, or if they've met me in person at a convention or a conference and then find my podcast after that and hear me say that, they can't reconcile who I was when they met me in person to who I'm talking about myself being when I'm on this podcast, because when I'm at a convention or a conference, I am there talking about something about which I'm passionate, about which I have a lot of knowledge and deep connection. And the people with whom I'm talking are there to learn about my passion and my interest and my knowledge. So it's a natural thing for me to talk about. And I can talk all day about homeschooling, parenting, and raising neurodivergent kids. And so you don't see that side of me that would just rather curl up with a good book or go hide out in my room. I remember the first year I ever went out and spoke at conferences and conventions. I would go back to my hotel room after a day of speaking, and I would go and order room service or drive through somewhere, and I would put like something mindless like HGTV on the television, and I would sit on my bed and I would eat and I would just watch mindless, brainless television, and I would then take a shower, put an audiobook on, and lay in bed and just be a vegetable because I couldn't give anymore and I needed to recharge. And so a lot of times our neurodivergent kids are the same way. They just can't give it all, and then they don't know how to give what the others around them need in order to form those friendships. So it's really difficult. These kids often feel like they're too much for everybody or not enough for everybody. They're too intense, they're too smart, they're too sensitive, they're too slow to process, they're too emotional. Maybe they feel like their jokes or their humor doesn't land. Maybe they feel like they don't have anything to contribute. Honestly, other kids may not know what to do with that, and it feels like rejection, isolation, or just being left out. And in reality, a lot of times those other kids might be perfectly content with your kid being around and find ways to include them once they get to know your kiddos. But your kiddos are, our kiddos are so intense, it puts out too much first. And it hurts. It hurts for them. It hurts for us as we watch them go through it. And yet, not every one of our kiddos experiences pain and hurt in the same way. So it brings us to the different kinds of lonely and what to do about them. So here's something that I wish someone had told me earlier in our homeschooling journey. There's more than one kind of loneliness, and not every child feels it the way that we think they should. The first one is the one that we get and our heart breaks for just again and again. There is the lonely child who craves connection. This is such a hard kiddo to parent because you can't do it for them and your heart is breaking for them simultaneously. And you know that they just need to keep putting themselves out there. They just need to keep trying. And there's nothing you can physically do but just be there for them. This kiddo is deeply aware that they're not fitting in right now. They want friends. They struggle to keep them. They struggle to make them. They might cry after group classes or play dates. They might misread cues, both for the positive and the negative. They might misread a cue that is, I want you to be a part of our group, and isolate themselves. They might misread a cue that's like, labels them as like off, and they feel chronically rejected. For this kiddo, there's the best thing you can do is just be there. You can validate their feelings. I totally get it. It makes sense that you feel sad. Connecting and being a part of these friendships is important to you. You need to keep trying to put yourself out there. It's hard. It's never easy. I struggle with it too. And this can be really difficult. You can model and role play social skills with these kiddos, especially if they're younger. Things like practice asking to join a game, taking turns, noticing body language, model for them being kind, complimenting people so they have little insights in things that they can say or do. For my oldest, some of his social anxiety was helped when he learned magic tricks and Rubik's Cubes because it served two purposes. He could hold a deck of cards and like fidget with them, which is always fascinating to other people when you get really quick with the fidgeting with cards and the shuffling of cards, which then could lead him into conversation starters like card tricks. And then Rubik's Cubes, same thing. You can be solving puzzle cubes, and everybody who can't solve a puzzle cube is fascinated by someone who can. And so these talents would give him ways to jump into conversations when he was younger. You can find and look for smaller or interest-based social settings, a Lego robotics club, birding walks, Dungeons and Dragons meetups, clubs. If you are at the high school level or the college level, you can help your kids find clubs to which that they can belong or join. You can sign your kids up for things. My youngest does a multi-age hip hop class at the Fine Arts Center every week during the school year, and he is not the best dancer. He's never going to be the best dancer. He loves the instructor. The instructor's phenomenal at meeting kids of varying abilities and ages and making them feel seen, loved, and heard. He doesn't get together with these kids outside of that class because they're all from all over, and the majority of them have traditional school schedules. But he's connected with them while they're there, and they have a shared goal of their 2.5-minute routine at the end of the year. And he just really feels connected when he's there. So finding and helping your kids find these places and encouraging them to put themselves out there or just join. And then if that's not working, seriously consider therapy or coaching, especially if rejection is affecting their self-esteem. I've said it before, I've said it again. There is no shame in seeking help. It's an incredible act of bravery. Whether your kid is young or older, therapy helps. And I want you to take advantage of seeking a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, whatever, whenever you need to. There are times in our lives, actually all of our children, with the exception of one, has seen a therapist at some point in their lives, and I'm not convinced that the youngest is not going to see someone sometime. I have seen a therapist repeatedly over the years, and actually am seriously considering joining up again. We've got some hard things going on in our life right now, and I've sent somebody off to college, which is very difficult for a homeschooling parent who's been with their kids all the time, and therapy might help me get through this new transition that we're all facing and some of the hard things coming up. There's no shame in it, and it can be really brave to help your kids see that is an act of bravery. Then the second type of loneliness and lonely kiddo is the content solo flyer. This is the kiddo who says they don't need friends. They're fine, really. And honestly, they might be. They might be okay. But you, the parent, feel sad or worried for them. For this child, it's a challenge. My oldest was like this when he was young. He was perfectly content being alone, doing the things that he was doing at home, hanging out with the younger kids in the neighborhood when they were out riding bikes and things like that, and felt a tremendous amount of anxiety and rejection when we tried to join groups. And so for the early part of our homeschooling, we did one-off things and spent the majority of our time at home doing the things that he loved doing at home. And as he grew and matured, he started branching out more and more. And the truth of the matter is it was harder on actually my husband and sometimes me than it was on him, because he was content doing the things he loved at home or out on the road when we'd go find young astronomies clubs and things like that, or astronomers clubs. But my husband, who was an extreme extrovert and didn't have any of these neurodivergent challenges with friendships, felt like he was missing out, because my husband's still friends with people from elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, and has this wide group of acquaintances and friendships. And the rest of us just don't. Most of us are content with smaller groups of friends. Now, my oldest son is branching out further and further, and my second oldest really loves a large group of people. But at the time, it wasn't true for my son. It was more difficult for us as parents watching him do things alone, and it was hard for us to realize how content he was. So for these kids, it's important for us to respect their wiring. Not everyone is built for a large social circle. They might just need to find one or two people, and that's not necessarily kids, that they really deeply connect with. For my oldest son, this was my father-in-law and his train group. I've talked about this before. He met with them once a week. They built model trains, And they really, it formed an important foundation for who he was and who he is now as an adult. We want to encourage connection without pressure for these kiddos. Maybe that's a shared online interest, a mentor, or volunteering. It's one of the reasons that we started the Learners Lab, because we recognize that for a lot of our kids that are neurodivergent, it's really difficult for them to connect in person because they connect with kind of quirky interests more so than just general outings. And this gave them a chance to do that. Right now, the interest groups that we have where kids can connect once or twice a month, depending, are a Lego club and a doodle club where we're just drawing doodles, and then a teen meetup that's twice a month where they play like online scavenger hunts and games and just have conversations, as well as a tween meetup. And those are facilitated by a licensed teacher from California. And then the rest are facilitated by me or volunteers. So those are available right now. We're continuing to look at expanding and pulling those out so you can just join individual ones if you'd want to. We are also, I've said this before, but it's more of a complex process than I thought it was going to be, so it's not super quick. But we are also reaching out to charter schools to begin accepting charter funds for some of these. And then we have the full Learners Lab that has access to all of those clubs, any we add in the future, as well as a social and emotional class and focus each month, and a creative thinking class and focus each month with some bonus activities for parents. Q&A and coaching with me, Q&A and coaching with an occupational therapist, and then a forum where they can ask questions at all times, and then pop-up master classes on different topics that parents are struggling with when raising their neurodivergent kids. So take a look. The link is over on the show notes or on the top of my webpage, raisinglifelonglearners.com. We also want to focus on quality over quantity. 1 or 2 kindred spirits is plenty for some of these kids, especially if they're content to be alone and reflect on their interests. We also want to take time to reflect on our own expectations and interests. Sometimes it's our own childhood wounds talking, and our kids aren't experiencing life in the same way that we did or are, and they are okay. So we really want to evaluate which one is our kid. The kid who is lonely and really craves that connection, in which case we want to do what we can to support them, encourage them, validate them, and help them find the resources. When they're young, we can find them for them. When they're older, we want to encourage them to push themselves out of their comfort zones and find them. Or the content solo flyer, in which case we've got to manage our own expectations and help get our kids out every once in a while and then connecting to 1 or 2 people that are really close with them. Okay, what if, though, we're the ones who feel left out? What if our kids are content, we found some places for them, or we found some online resources for them, but we're the ones who feel left out? This is the part where I gently say, sometimes it's us who are hurting more than our kids. We have different expectations when we go into parenthood, and sometimes our reality doesn't look like what we thought it was going to look like, and that's really hard. We see our kids playing alone when others are running in groups. We wonder if we're failing them. We wonder if we didn't do enough to prepare them for the transitions that they face, whether that's in middle school and outside groups, or high school, or a new co-op, or college, or whatever. And we feel like we failed. We remember how much we struggled or how much we thrived, and our kids superimpose that, or we superimpose that experience that we had onto our own kids' experience and struggle with what their actual reality is. I get it. I felt it too. I feel it all the time. I'm feeling it right now as I'm speaking. We've talked on this podcast before about parenting, how parenting neurodivergent kids often means grieving the childhood we imagined for them and for us. It's not that we don't love the kids that we have, because we do. I, for one, am so grateful for the kids that I have. My life and my parenting has been so interesting, so fun, so challenging, so rewarding. And I'm so grateful that I was able and am able to raise neurodivergent kids. But it doesn't negate the fact that I know life and growing up and transitions from season to season for each one of my kids is going to be difficult, and difficult in a way that it wouldn't be if they were neurodivergent. And I feel badly. I feel horribly that it won't just be easy for them, because there's nothing I want more than for my kids to have the best, most rewarding and valuable life. And this is difficult. and it's going to be difficult. If you find yourself feeling sad or ashamed or even jealous when you see those curated Instagram friendships, those reels of the idyllic homeschool and homeschool group, or the amazing high school or college or outside club experience that somebody's kids are having, it's okay. You're human and you just want what's best for your kid. You want your kid to have everything everyone else is having and more. But let's try to reframe this. Are your kids thriving emotionally? If they are, then it's okay. Their reality is not your reality, and it's okay to allow them to have their reality. So be okay with that. Do they feel safe, supported, and seen? If they feel safe, supported, and seen, even if it's hard for them, even if what they're experiencing is a struggle, that's the magic. If they feel that they can come to you or one trusted friend or a sibling, you've done a good job. You will be able to help them through it. It might be hard and it might be long and it might be heart-wrenching, but you'll be able to see them through it because they have a foundation that allows them to feel safe, seen, heard, and supported. And then finally, are we letting their needs, not our fears, drive the plan? That's the goal. The goal is to help them see what they need and get them there and not superimpose our own fears or our own needs on them. We want them to live their life with no regrets. We want them to build friendships, relationships, connections on their terms and in their needs. Okay, so what are some strategies we can use today to help our kids who are at home with us form friendships and build friendship skills? So let's shift into proactive mode now. Whether your kiddo is longing for a friend or just needs a little scaffolding, here are some practical things that you can do.
Okay, so let's talk about math. Specifically, let's talk about finding a program that actually works for your unique homeschoolers. In our house, we've been using CTC Math for years, and even though I am so appreciative that they sponsor this podcast, I am a paying customer. I'm still a paying customer even with their sponsorship because it's just that good, and I love supporting great companies with great programs. With 2 kids still at home, both with very different learning needs, CTC Math has been the flexible and dependable solution that I keep coming back to. One of my kiddos needs more time to process math concepts, and I love that she can move through the lessons at her own pace without feeling rushed or behind. My other kiddo, he flies. He jumps straight to the end of unit tests to see what he already knows, and then we only focus on the lessons that fill the gaps. That kind of customization is gold when you're homeschooling gifted or twice exceptional kids. CTC Math gives you the access to every grade level from kindergarten through 12th grade with your subscription so that your child can accelerate, review, or jump around based on their own needs, not based on some rigid curriculum structure. And because it's video-based with clear instruction and auto-graded lessons and quizzes, it frees me up to support my kids without being chained to a textbook, teacher's manual, or whiteboard. So whether your child needs more time or is racing ahead, you can tailor it all with CTC Math. Check it out at ctcmath.com. You will see why so many homeschool families trust it. And if you've got quirky math learners like I do, I think you're going to love it. If you have any questions about CTC, like I said, we've been using it for years in our homeschool, and I encourage you to reach out and ask me any questions that you have. If you do pop over there, let them know that I sent you and let them know that you appreciate their ongoing support of homeschoolers everywhere, especially those of you here at Raising Lifelong Learners. All right, let's get back to today's episode.
Okay, now that we're back, let's jump into those practical things that you can do to help your kiddos build friendship skills and find friends when they need them. Number 1, you can normalize neurodiversity at home. Use books, media, and other conversations to talk about different brain types. Let your child know they're not broken. They are beautifully wired. Help them understand that their brains are wired in a way that makes this difficult for them, or this easy for them, or this fun for them, or this whatever for them. And that is okay. It's amazing, and they are perfect the way that they are. If you practice a specific faith, you can say God doesn't make mistakes. You are exactly who you're meant to be, and you're going to be able to find who you need and what you need in your life. If you don't practice a specific faith, you can just tell them. It'd be a boring world if everybody's brains were wired in the same exact way. We need your brain wiring to innovate and make change and make discoveries and have creative thinkers in our world. And so you can approach it from whatever way you and your family and your kids need so that they know their brains are exactly what they need to be. Okay, there's a post on my site. I'm going to link to it in the show notes, but it's all about helping neurodivergent kids manage big emotions. And I'm going to link it in the show notes. It's worth reading to help you normalize the neurodiversity at home and the neurodivergent brain. There are also a couple other posts from the past on the site about friendships and some of those difficulties. So I will link to those as well. It's going to be a very resource-filled podcast show notes. So I would encourage you to go over to raisinglifelonglearners.com and click through some of those and read those when you have time. Okay. Another thing that you can do is prioritize shared interests over age. Just like when my oldest would be hanging out in the basement with a bunch of senior citizens who were retired building model trains, you can find something that sparks your kids' interest and encourage them to find mentors. For a while, my kids were going next door at the old house that we lived at because the person who lived there did glass fusing art in her basement, and so they would fuse glass with her or watch her do it. Friendship doesn't have to mean same-age peers. Neurodivergent kids often connect better across age groups when interests are aligned. So you can think about maker spaces, maybe libraries, clubs, science fairs, local theater groups, community theater, online creative writing circles, online interest groups, online clubs. Anything like this that taps into your kids' interests is going to be really good for them. You can use gentle, social coaching. It's not about fixing your child. It's about giving them tools to interact with other people they may come across as they look to find. So you can practice conversation starters, compliments, things like that. You can discuss how to join group activities when you feel like they've already formed their group without you, because chances are they would welcome new members. You can break down common social scripts. This is a very useful tool. Those social stories that I've talked about before, there are a couple posts on the site about that and lots of resources that you can find online if you just Google social stories for neurodivergent kids. You can watch shows together and talk about the characters and their social choices, read books together and do the same thing. You can also facilitate low stakes social practice. Instead of diving into big groups and play dates right away, maybe try playground meetups or virtual Minecraft clubs or Roblox clubs if your kids are playing those games. You can do family meetups with one other family, one-on-one hikes or nature scavenger hunts or online pen pals or groups. You can use the Learner's Lab to find like-minded families in virtual clubs. These kinds of things can be a safe space to build social confidence early on and slowly. You don't necessarily have to become great friends with people in online communities like the Learner's Lab, but it can at least give your kids practice using social skills in a safe place. You can be the bridge for your kids, not the bulldozer for your kids. You don't need to orchestrate their every social interaction, though I will tell you, it is hard not to have that be your instinct. As a parent of neurodivergent kids, not just parenting expert and specialist on neurodivergent kids, this is hard. This is hard to see. It's hard to see our children hurt. It's hard to not want to go in there and swoop out all obstacles from their path and scaffold them even as young adults. You can pave the path by setting up opportunities. You can coach them gently. You can let them grow at their own pace. You can encourage them. You can find out information about different clubs that they may want to join or different opportunities that are either at their co-op space, their high school, if they're taking some classes there. I had a friend whose kids took multiple classes at the high school, but they were still homeschooling. It depends what your district allows. Whether they're at a community college for dual enrollment or they've started their college career or they're away at college, you can help them find some of these places and groups to join and then encourage them. And then just give them encouragement for the long haul. I want I want to close with this. Friendships aren't a checklist. They don't always come easily. They don't look like they should, but your child, exactly as they are, is worthy of connection. And that's what we need them to understand. They are worthy of finding people who get them for who they are. And sometimes that just takes longer. Sometimes it may seem like everyone around them has the group that they're meant to have and they don't. And that's just part of the gig when it comes to having a uniquely wired brain. Is it fair? Heck no. It is not fair, especially if you or your kiddo falls into that first camp that is lonely and wants connection. But your kiddo is exactly who they are, meant to be, and worth connection in the way that they are. It might come slowly. It might come through unusual paths. It might look different from what they or you expected. But with your support, your understanding, and your willingness to see your kiddo for who they really are, it will come. You'll be their soft place to land. You'll be their dumping ground emotionally. You'll be their support system, and you'll be there to validate them and encourage them to keep putting themselves out there. In the meantime, you're doing an amazing job. You're giving your child something many kids don't get, a safe place to be themselves, to grow at their own pace, and to learn what it means to be truly accepted for who they are. That's the foundation for any friendship. I appreciate you. I appreciate your willingness to be there for your kiddos. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd leave a review or share it with a friend who's walking a similar journey. It really does help the algorithm see these episodes as worth pushing out. So the more reviews, the more ratings we have on platforms like Apple iTunes, Spotify, all of those different platforms. I think it's Apple Podcasts now. And the more you share it with a friend or post about it if you're on social media, the more and more people who need the support can get it. So I would appreciate you sharing. Don't forget, if you're looking for a safe, supportive place for your neurodivergent kiddo and you to connect with others, explore interests, and build social emotional skills, come check out the Learners Lab over on the homepage or the show notes page. All the show notes and links and resources for this episode will be at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. But the Learners Lab's full of families just like yours, navigating these big questions together. You've got this. I promise you. I'm cheering you on every step of the way. I'll be back same time, same place next week with another episode. And again, if you are a member of a charter school and you'd like us to reach out and form a relationship with your charter school to begin accepting funds, not just for the Learners Lab, but for coaching, online courses, and the unit study resources that we have on the website, just send me an email at support@raisinglifelonglearners.com. Like I said, it's a more challenging and involved process than I originally expected, and I'm doing it all on my own, so it may take a little while to get accepted, but I'd like to start that ball rolling. So let me know. Also, let me know if there's a guest you'd like to hear on the podcast. I'm about ready with time-wise to be able to start bringing guests back on. Over the last year, my schedule has not been conducive to setting up interviews with others, but I'm ready to start doing that again. So I want to make sure that I'm bringing on the people who will be the best support to you. So feel free to reach out again through support@raisinglifelonglearners.com or the contact form on the website and let me know who you'd like to see. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Same time, same place next week. Bye for now.